Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk About It. This is your host, Taylor, and today I'm coming to you from LA once again. I'm here at the W Hollywood, and I'm really excited to record with this guest, not only because she has an amazing story, and I'm really excited to get into it, but also because we just chatted for like 20, 30 minutes, and I'm like, I love when this happens, when I follow people, and then I meet them in real life, and I'm like, no, actually, like, I thought I would fuck with you, but like, I really fuck with you. So welcome, Alexis, to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. You also have a podcast yourself. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about it?
Yeah. So Recovering from Reality was kind of built out of a desire or a need that I saw in the world to talk about mental health and addiction. Yeah. And I have a background in reality TV too. And when I got sober, I decided I was never, ever going to return to the media space. I was like, it's a cruel, cruel world, and I'm not interested in being a part of it. But I couldn't stand by. And I think really for me, and this is not to get crazy political, but
well, also you did just have a story with Bernie and Pete, and I was like, yay, I'm so glad like when people actually post about politics, because a lot of people
I talk about politics
don't.
a lot. Yeah. So really during the last election cycle when Hillary was running, I began to wake up. So I'm 28 years old. And so the first time I ever voted was for Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And I've only known like, you know, here was this kind of like hero president of mine who legalized gay marriage and who started talking about our planet and the fact that it was dying and like all of these really important issues to me. And while he was still very much so a centrist, like I saw our country moving forward. Yeah. And then when Donald Trump became the nominee, it was like my bubble popped. Like
100%.
Emotionally, as someone who's just an empath in general, like I feel the weight of the world on me on a regular basis, like what's happening in the Middle East and what's happening at our borders, like intuitively and in my heart, like I can feel that. And it takes like a lot to, and a huge part of my practice is like channeling energy from the universe and not just using all of mine and burning out all the time. But yeah, I just was like, here we are. And I knew he was going to get elected because we live in a society that's just, it's just no longer sustainable to operate the way that we are anymore. And so I created this space for people to come on and be their authentic selves and share their stories. And so it's not just about addiction, but it's about overcoming whatever struggle you might have, whether it's having children with special needs or going through a gnarly divorce or whatever it might be. Recovering from Reality is a place for people to wake the fuck up to their reality and to get the tools that they need to deal with it. And so that's why I did it, because I was just like stoked about, you know what I mean? I was like, oh wait, here's a huge problem that I'm seeing on this planet. And like, how am I going to be a part of the solution?
Yeah.
So
That's beautiful. I'm so happy that you have it. And very similar to kind of what I do here on Let's Talk About It too, of just like creating a space to be able to have these really important conversations and to share our stories and lean more into our authentic selves. And there's several things I want to get into with you today, but I think the first is maybe just getting a little bit more background and hearing more about your story in terms of recovery and addiction. I don't actually... I've talked about it very briefly on the show. I used to do substance abuse rehabilitation when I lived in Baltimore doing group therapy, and was something that I really thought I would go further into. Now I'm just in private practice and focus more on sex therapy, but it's still an area that I think is... gosh, so important. Substance abuse is a... Honestly, I don't even know, like, I want to say epidemic, but it's like even more than that. It's like, it's literally in every corner.
Yeah. I go and speak on panels and I say, raise your hand if you are directly impacted by addiction. Yeah. And there's like literally 2 or 3 people left that don't have their hands raised by the end of it.
And they're lying. They know someone.
Well, in this day and age, it's like we view addiction as like the crack addict on the street. Okay. And I can say that because I was one. But But it's not like it is, it's work addiction and sex addiction, gambling, food, whatever it might be, food restriction. I mean, there's so many different forms of addiction now.
And it's really just numbing. It's like
it's
an
trauma.
addiction to numbing.
So I own a drug and alcohol treatment center, Aloe House. And we've helped thousands of people get sober. And the vast majority of them have very similar stories. They had early childhood abuse, most of the time early childhood sexual abuse, and they turned to drugs to cope. And that was really my story and my experience. What people saw of me when I had my reality show Pretty Wild was a very small blip in time, and a very challenging time in my life. And what they didn't see was the before, right? So I grew up in the outskirts of LA. My dad was this big hotshot director of photography who was working on all the huge sitcoms in the 90s. And he had an affair on my mom, and they got divorced when I was 3.5. My dad was an alcoholic. He was very manic. He never knew when he was going to have high highs or when he was going to have low lows. And so that was really scary and unstable. And then...
And you were an only child?
No. I have other siblings. And there was incest that was happening in the home too. So between the age of 5 to 7, I was being raped. And nobody knew about that until I got sober. I kept that secret forever. I was groomed really, really well. And for those of you who don't know what the grooming process is, it's basically when someone comes into your life and becomes like a confidant and someone that you love as a child, and then they abuse you, and it becomes really confusing because you don't know that the abuse is abuse. You think it's that person loving you. And especially as a child who felt a bit neglected at home because of what was happening in my family unit, that attention became desirable for me in a weird way. Like, I loved this person who was abusing me. And I mean, I blocked out the traumatic parts for many, many, many years. And so what ended up happening was my parents split. We were moving all the time. I had this sexual abuse that I had not dealt with. And around the age of 10, to 12, I was like, okay, I'm not doing well in school. I can't really make friends. Like, I was in a constant state of fight or flight. And so I found substances. And what a gift that was for me. It saved my life, you know. I think we live in a very, like, puritanical society where we view, like, drugs and sex as bad things. Drugs aren't the problem. You know, the trauma that I incurred was the problem. And for a very, very long time, drugs were my solution, and it worked so well. And then it stopped working, right? And then it became a huge problem. So I ended up graduating school 2 years early. I got my GED, and I started working in the entertainment industry in LA. And before you knew it, I had my show. I signed with E! June, I think 3 days after my 18th birthday.
Wow.
June 23rd, I believe it was, 2009. And I was so excited. My sister and I, we'd been really hustling, doing all these music videos and just whatever work we could find. And it's really a 1 in a million shot. You get your own reality show. And a month later is when the robbery took place, and that really changed the course of my life forever. So there's a common misconception in the media, and this is a thing that I talk about on the regular basis, is the way that media portrays women. I became the face of this thing that I really had very little involvement with. Because sex sells, and it's way more of a sexy story, 100%. You know, that like this, you know, hot 18-year-old like robbed all these celebrities, which that wasn't the case. I had made friends with Nick Prugo, who was also in LA often, and I was introduced to him through my sister. And one night we were out partying, And I've been doing loads of Xanax and alcohol and Oxycontin. So
it's quite a mix.
Very powerful conversation. I came to in someone's living room and I grabbed a duffel bag. And this is not to say I was some Mother Teresa, because I certainly wasn't. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I kind of woke up like, okay, this is a bad relationship. I'm in a bad spot. I shouldn't be here. Mm-hmm. Didn't talk to Nick again. Started filming my show in October, and literally on the second day of filming, I was arrested. So my show, which was originally like about being like the hippie version of the Kardashians, I grew up in a home where we practiced Buddhism since I was a child. Okay. And people are always like, wait, all of that chaos was going on at home, but your mom was a Buddhist, like who believed in manifestation before manifestation was cool. And I was like, yeah, because she was spiritually bypassing. Mm-hmm. And so she would dive into her practices as a means to like Band-Aid the deep inner trauma that needed to be dealt with. Yeah. Yeah. And haven't we all done that?
Mm-hmm. Yep. She's not alone.
No, she's not. So yeah, the second day of filming. So my show really took a turn, and here I was, this 18-year-old fighting a case on national television. And what people didn't know was that whole time I was addicted to heroin. Mm-hmm. And my drug addiction that started at 12, by the time I was 14 was Vicodin. By the time I was 16 was Oxycontin. By the time I was 18 was full-blown heroin. And by the time I was the end of that year, shooting up on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And so it just happened that fast. And then I got sober at 19. So it was really a quick progression. Mm-hmm. And the best thing that ever happened to me, like taking that plea deal and going to jail, was the best thing that ever happened to me. Yeah. I wouldn't be here today if it didn't happen that way.
Yeah. Would you say that that's your rock bottom?
I have a hard time with bottoms.
Yeah.
Because I think, first of all, there's an association like that you have to, or an idea or belief that you have to have some major bottom to get sober. Yeah. So people hear that term. Yep.
They're like, oh, well, I can keep going now because it's not
but honey,
that bad.
With fentanyl-laced heroin out there now and pill presses where people are like making pills that look like Xanax but really aren't. Yeah. And all of the things that are happening in this crazy time that we're living in, your bottom, you're always like a smidge away from death. Yeah. It's really that easy. Mm-hmm. So I had many bottoms. What kept me sober, because I didn't get sober that time. I got out like literally up until a year and a half ago as a twice convicted felon. Mm. What ended up happening was I got out of rehab, and I could clearly see, or out of jail. Mm-hmm. That summer, I spent a summer in jail for that sentence, and I got out, and I was like, okay, clearly heroin is a problem. Yes. Like, this is a problem for me. Like, weed and alcohol are fine. Mm-hmm. But it's like, no, honey, you're the problem. It's not the drugs. Yeah. Like, the problem is you. Mm-hmm. And so, oh my God, within 2 weeks, I was back to shooting up. Mm-hmm. And I got arrested again because I could not show up to probation because I was panhandling on the street for drug money all day, and I just couldn't get around. Mm-hmm. And I was arrested again. And that is when I started to have, like, over the next month and a half, a very, like, an emotional bottom. Mm. The drugs were taken away because I ended up getting sentenced to treatment for an entire year. Okay. So the drugs were gone. And inpatient. And for that first month and a half, I argued left and right. Because, one, I didn't want to be an addict like my dad. Yeah. I had a huge trigger around that word. I'm like, I'm not like him. Yeah. You know what I mean? I don't want that, like, label forever. Mm-hmm.
And did you watch him go through treatment?
No, he's never. I'm the first person in my entire family to get sober. Yeah. And so, and we can dive into that too, because that was a huge awakening in the last couple of years for me, but I digress. I went into treatment For the first month and a half, I made every counselor, and now I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. And I'm like, I know you little shit sitting in the corner.
Yep.
I was you. Like, cool it.
Yep.
No, but I just fought tooth and nail. The thing is, I was too smart for my own good. So I would say things like, I'm just physically dependent on this. Like, I got hooked, and without it, I would go into withdrawal. And so, you know, like
I don't really need it or want it.
Yeah,
like I'm fine without it. It's just my body.
Like it's just my body wants it. Like I'm totally fine. And then there was this incredible man who said to me, Alexis, do you realize that like normal people would never put a needle in their arm and like shoot up heroin? Like that's not like a normal thing to do. And his words clicked for me. And I was like, oh yeah. And then I ended up relapsing on whippets in 4 days. 3 days. I'll have 9 years sober. So a couple months into treatment, I found myself doing whippets in this kid's car because they don't show up on a drug test. And that was my emotional bottom, where all of a sudden I just started bawling, crying. And I was like, why can't I stop? Like, why am I a slave? Like a literal slave to substances. Yeah. Who are you? How did you get here? Like, this is not who you are. It's almost like I got like a download from the heavens that was like, you're so much better than this. Like, you're just like, you're this magical, empathic, sweet, kind, like beautiful child. Like, why are you doing this to yourself? And the rest was history.
Yeah. Wow.
That's great.
I mean, I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing all of this. I'm wondering what it's like for you even just to like reflect on all of this today.
Yeah, I have so
I mean, it's like part of your work now, too.
Yes,
it's like sharing your story, but
it's part of my work. But I think the stages of healing is just it's ever changing. We go through periods of like deep sadness and like reverence and moments of anger and of pain. And the healing journey for me certainly has not been a linear one. I think, you know, in that year of treatment, I no longer attend AA, but I did for a long time, and it was a gift. And I still really live in many of those, all of those steps, really. But for me, it's like I have just this empathy for who I was. Like, I used to carry so much shame around my story, and I'd want to hide it. And even a couple of years ago, I moved to a very kind of like Stepford-like community because I had children and I wanted to move to the suburbs. And so we bought this like one of those tract homes that like, you know what I mean? In a gated community, whatever. And I found myself like wanting to hide away because I didn't want anyone to know my story. I didn't want my children to be affected. All of that. Well,
it was almost like you wanted to blend in
as
a way.
As like a survival mechanism, right? But what happened was I ended up slipping into a depression that got so bad I became like suicidal. Because I wasn't like honoring my truth and my experience. And my experience is not one to be ashamed about. You know, when I lay out my life, it's like I can completely understand why that traumatized child turned into that addicted teen.
Absolutely.
And so it's interesting, but there are phases. So I just wrote a book. And the emotions of writing that book.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Crazy, wild, like, you know, deep anger and feelings that I didn't even know were still there that came up. And so it was really this therapeutic process for me to write the book. And I did it. You know, I self-published. I did the whole thing because I wanted to just write what I wanted to write. Now I still had to have an attorney go through and like take out a lot, which sucked. But
it
was worth it. And what I found, going back to what I said, you know, I'd love to dive into that more, was I had this resentment towards my family that, you know, in my family unit, I was like the black sheep. The black sheeps are usually there to like light the way towards peace and freedom. They just don't necessarily have the tools to do it. And so everybody ostracizes them, and they're always like the hardest one to deal with and the chaos maker in the family unit. An example of this is like when my dad would hit me in the face and give me a black eye when I was 12. It was like, what did you do to incite that anger in him, right? So, and I'm sitting there screaming,
like you were the problem.
It's you fucking assholes. Like, it's you, not me. And so I had resentment about the fact that me as a child, like I was robbed of my childhood. And when I got sober, the rest of my family started to get better, but it was on the weight of me. Like I had to be the one to present to them their chaos. Yeah. And it fucking sucked. And so I had this resentment of like, you guys have to do the work. Like, why am I always the one that's doing the heavy lifting around here? Yeah. And what I realized just kind of recently was that I believe, at least, that I chose these parents, that I was brought into this family unit to have these experiences. I don't believe there are accidents. I believe that like everything is divinely orchestrated. Like, you know, just the same way the sun and the moon and the stars and the ocean and everything has like this beautiful, you know,
interconnectedness.
Like so is my life. Like it was all meant to be exactly how it was, because I wouldn't be sitting here today without it. Yeah. So that was a gift, and it's almost like it's a gift, and it's like and so moving forward, the way that you've been supported your whole life, you know, the rest of your life is going to be the same. Like a tree loses all of its leaves every year, and it's never worried like that they're not going to come back. You know what I mean? It's always provided for. Yeah. And so when I realized that, like it didn't have to be a burden anymore, that it could be a gift, and that my pain could be my greatest present, you know, I started to really realize like, okay, I can drop that anger around that. So it's not been like some, you know, it's been 9 years of work. Yeah. I don't think people understand that. Like, you don't go to therapy for 6 sessions.
No, 100%. It's not like you go and then like in a month you're fixed. Like it's always a lifelong journey, I feel like, of healing. Yeah. Yeah. And what kind of a role has therapy played for you throughout all of recovery? Was therapy ever present? Like pre-show and pre-jail, like any of that, like after parents' divorce or anything like that?
Occasionally here or there for like one session, but like not something that was regular. In treatment, and this is why I always will advocate for long-term treatment, and as a treatment provider and a treatment center owner who really believes in like a holistic approach, I wasn't really stable or even ready to start dabbling into the work until I was like 7-8 months sober. And I think that might be the case for a lot of people. Like learning the tools instead of diving into the trauma. I feel like first we need to learn some of the tools. Yeah. And give ourselves like a little bit of space to stabilize. And so the first 7 months of my sobriety, like I told my therapist about my sexual abuse. I've been abused by babysitter. I mean, it started with that incest situation, and then it was like babysitters. And then at 16, I was raped by some big top guy in Hollywood, and just like lots of sexual trauma. Yeah. So I started like dabbling into that a little bit. And then I did that last 4 months, I was doing group therapy. This whole time I was doing therapy. Yeah. I just wasn't really ready to do the work. Like I would sit in there and participate, but like, and the narrative was always like, poor me. Like, you know, like all of this shit is happening to me. It's like, you know, there was like no willingness to like bear any responsibility.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until a couple of years into my sobriety that I started doing therapy on a regular basis. And I did a good 4 years straight.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, I think you're totally spot on there that, I mean, honestly, even in doing trauma therapy, like it's not, you don't just dive straight into like the trauma itself or that emotional healing, because you do have to learn a lot of tools first. And you do have to like develop a relationship with that therapist even. And especially coming out of recovery, like you kind of also are still somewhat in survival mode. And you're like, how do I even just like function on a daily basis?
I have no income, no job, no skills. I'm basically unemployable. Like, what am I going to do with my life? You know? And thankfully, the treatment center that I went to, the owner was like, you should probably go to school. And that's when I went and I enrolled to become a drug and alcohol counselor. Yeah. And, you know, that was the greatest thing that I ever did. But, I was not ready. And now I've tried everything. I've done EMDR. I've done cognitive behavioral therapy. I just did, like a little over a year ago, transcranial magnetic stimulation. That was a really cool experience. Wow. I've done, did I say neurofeedback? I've tried it all. And I love it. And I think it's great. And thank God we have these tools and this technology now to heal.
Yeah. So what, I mean, honestly, I'm like blown away because you do so many things. Like you do so many things. You are a mom of 2. You've been with your husband now for 8
years.
8 years.
Yeah.
So long-term relationship.
Yeah.
You just finished your book, or still writing your book. There's a book.
Came out.
Book came out.
Book came out in early December.
Book is out.
Yeah. It's a lot.
You own a treatment center. You run a podcast.
I know. For all of my friends who text me and then I don't get back to them 3 days later, I'm sorry. Like, I'm doing my best.
Yeah. Well, how do you, I mean, cheesy question, very cliche, very non-original question, but how do you balance all of that? Like,
it's so hard. It's really easy for me to go into workaholic mode too.
I mean, I was like, don't go into therapist mode here, but I was like, yeah, like how does that play a part in your recovery? Because you're like being a busy bee, you know, is, can be a slippery slope into that, because that is also sometimes numbing things. And when we're not putting that time aside for ourselves to like just be with ourselves and to focus on our own like care and nourishment, that's kind of like, there might be things we're avoiding or trying to numb.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting. Like the desire, the major shift for me in my sobriety happened when I recognized that I was no longer always trying to check out of my reality. And that's where the name Recovering from Reality came from, right? I'd spent my entire life checking out. Yeah. And there was a shift that happened a couple of years into my sobriety where all of a sudden I was like, I would rather be checked into life than checked out. And that's a gift. And so finding balance is still challenging though, right? Here's the thing though. Once we learn the gift of mindfulness, we know when it's too much. Yeah. The key is listening.
Yes. Like you can be aware of it, but like just brush it aside when you actually listen.
Yeah. Or like make excuses of like, well, I'm launching a business and this is just what it takes to launch a business. It's stress. It's work. It's all of the things.
I'm supposed to be totally exhausted and drained.
I'm supposed to be totally exhausted and drained. Exactly. And so, you know, I was telling you before we started that I'm taking a month and a half off. And I don't really get off because I'm still a mom of 2 kids, which is a full-time job in itself. Up until the end of 2018, I was a stay-at-home mom. And life was easy to balance because my kids went off to school and a preschool and school, or my baby was home and she'd nap and I'd meditate, and we had this routine. And then when the fires happened, 90% of our business burnt down.
Oh my gosh.
And so my husband was like, you have to go back to work. At that time, I was not working at the treatment center in person. I was doing stuff off site. And I was like, well, I don't really want to start going back into therapy, and counseling. I want to start my business, and he thought I was crazy. And so the last year has been really rough. I will say this, having all the tools that I have is great, but you have to apply them. So for me, it looks like this. I have to meditate every day. Have to. Right now, for everyone who wants to know, a lot of times I get DMs. I'm obsessed with Joe Dispenza's work. He's changed my life. His meditations were a game changer for me. Love them. So have to meditate. I'm working on creating more spaciousness. I used to do like back to back. And I would just load up my schedule, especially when I was coming into LA. And then I was like, I don't feel good at the end of the day. So I need to create more space. But I'm not going to lie. It's hard. Like a couple of weeks ago, I found myself crying in my room because I only saw my kids for 5 hours that week, because I've just been so busy with the book stuff. So, you have the awareness, and then it's like you have to apply the knowledge that you have. And I'm grateful for the girlfriends that I have that I can call and vent to. And they're like, it's okay, honey. You can start again next week. Like, rejig your schedule. Like, take some time off. So when I do take longer periods of time off, I like to have fun. Yeah. So it's my wedding anniversary. It's, and we go to Coachella every year because we love music. We don't go for all the fancy parties like everyone else. People don't even go to Coachella.
I know. It's absurd.
Like, and they honestly, just go to the parties.
I know.
What the fuck?
It's crazy.
I go for the music. Like,
literally some of my favorite artists are going to be there who aren't even the headliners, but they're the super teeny tiny Prince. I'm like, that's my girl. Like, I love her. Like, I need to go see her. So yes, I feel you on that.
We're going to go and do that and just have some time to unwind. Yeah. I have been considering exploring, and this will be interesting to you, and people might be shocked about this, microdosing with psilocybin.
Do you want to go to Jamaica with me?
Are you going to do this? Are you going on an ayahuasca trip?
So I might be.
Okay, that's interesting.
I don't know that I would do it myself, but I am going on the 13th.
You should just do it.
In a week and a half, basically. To go to Jamaica for a plant medicine retreat thing, where they are doing it with people who have a history or are currently clinically diagnosed with some sort of anxiety or depression or trauma. Yeah. And they have a whole medical team on stuff and all this stuff. So
yeah,
I'm going to go check it out.
Johns Hopkins University right now is studying the effects of psilocybin and long-term recovery. So let's talk about microdosing for a second, because I think a lot of people might go, that's a drug, and da-da-da, which I'm so beyond that now, because it's I'm not, I can't. That's a whhole nother podcast that we can dive into.
And frequently the same people that are saying that about that are also the ones who are like, we're going to go out for happy hour and go get some drinks. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So microdosing is an interesting experience. I've tried it once, and I had a really profound experience. It is non-psychoactive. Let me repeat that. It is non-psychoactive. You're not having a mushroom trip. Although if you want to have a mushroom trip, by all means.
You can. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Listen, I can't tell you how many challenging cases that I've seen in our practice where specifically that comes to mind, and we're not going to give her name or anything, but there's a challenging case of this one girl. She's been with us about 6 times. We've also sent her out to other places. She's overdosed. I can't even tell you how many times. The chances of her achieving long-term sobriety are nil.
Yeah. At that point, you take a harm reduction.
And we've tried harm reduction. We've tried it all, and it's just challenging. She's a perfect candidate to go and have the ayahuasca experience and really get to the root of her, needs and heal. So I do believe that there is a time and place for plant medicine. I think it needs to be done with deep reverence and care. I think it needs to be done by a shaman. I think, the whole thing. But psilocybin, back to that, while I have done so much work in therapy, like I said, all those different modalities, I feel like in a lot of ways it's like if you can imagine a suitcase that just is like filled with papers and it's just crap. And I've taken them all out, dumped out the suitcase that used to just be sitting there cluttering up my mind. I've reorganized everything. Now it's all in the manila folders. But I'm still carrying around a lot of manila folders, even though it's all compartmentalized. And I'm ready to like shred the papers and burn it and move on. Yeah. And for somebody who's experienced the amount of trauma that I've gone through, that's really hard. And we can get into like the limbic brain and prefrontal cortex and all of that another time. I hope you'll come on my podcast so we can 100%. Dive more into that. But for somebody who's lived in a constant state of fight or flight for much of their life, it's really hard to like shred those papers and to let it go. And so the psilocybin, in a really beautiful way, from the one experience that I had, and this is the first time I've ever talked about it, and I know it's going to be controversial, and I'll probably get a lot of hate mail, but I don't really care, because here's the thing.
This is a safe, supportive
If it
space.
brings you peace, I'm all for it. And like I said in the beginning, like, the drugs aren't the problem, you are. So what's your intention?
Yeah. What's your purpose
Are
and your
you
motive?
being intentional? And so the one time I did it, I went to the beach and I was like, I didn't know what to experience or what I would witness or hear or whatever. And it wasn't even that. Like I said, there was no psychoactive effects, but there was a peace and a connectedness that I felt with my own body that I've never experienced before in my life. And I imagine that that's what it's like to live as like a normal human being if you've never experienced like the amount of trauma that that I have. I'm like, oh, this is much you know, because the programming that I got since I was a child, my subconscious programming was my body's not my own. I'm unlovable. I'm unworthy. All of these things. And so while I know all those things aren't true now and I've done a lot of work, it'll be interesting. So I think during this 6-week hiatus, what you do is you take it every other day for 5 weeks and then you stop. And that's it. And so I'm going to go and explore. I think it'll be really interesting. We can talk about ayahuasca, the person that I know that just recently did it off this podcast because I don't want to infringe on their privacy. But again, from what I understand, she doesn't ever show you more than you need to see. You know what I mean? She shows you exactly what you need to see. And that can be a gift for many. Now, do I think I want to go and have an ayahuasca experience? Yeah. No.
The ayahuasca experience, from what I have heard, is much more intense than doing something like microdosing, where it can be in some ways traumatic, hopefully healing. But for some people, like you have to be really, really particular in the people you're with and making sure you're with a shaman, that it's really a whole intensive experience of healing that does involve like painfulness to come up. That's part of that healing. Whereas with microdosing, from what I've heard, just seems like a more like you're seeing things so much clearer. And
it wasn't even that I'm seeing things clearer. I just felt really in tune with who I am. The message was, you're perfect. Like you've always been. What you envision as perfection, like the middle of the Amazon, which is like operating perfectly, and the animals and in harmony and all that, that is you. Yeah. And I've never felt that in my life before that experience. So I think we'll do it. And what's nice about it is it's very short-lived. You can drive, you could work, you can operate, all of these things. It's literally, I imagine and I don't take antidepressants, but I imagine what it's like if you know, and and that's not because I'm against antidepressants. It's because I literally have tried them all and none of them have worked. So, and I'm all for like holistic healing, but there is a time and a place for Western medicine.
Definitely. And so you'll do this for about 5 weeks and
then I'll come back on here and report back.
And I was going to say, I mean, like journaling, like you just wrote a book. So I'm like writing can be a very healing thing to do. I'd be curious to see like how you kind of track that and reflect on that like kind of week by week. But would love to do some kind of follow up on that too, even off pod. I'd be curious
I'll let you know how it goes. Yeah, I'm excited.
And you mentioned, basically you've grown up your whole life being told that your body's not yours. And I've received several questions around this of how to reintroduce sex and sexuality to your life after experiencing a sexual trauma.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit from your own personal experience of what it was like to, even with meeting your husband and developing that sexual relationship and whatever you're comfortable with sharing.
It's interesting. So I grew up in a house. My mom was a playmate. Everything was always super sexualized, focused on my body. And then I was also dealing with sexual abuse. And so the subliminal messaging was like, this is just for men and for their enjoyment. And then what happened was I started acting out sexually because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. My body was like theirs, and was taken advantage of by a lot of men and women. It's interesting. So I've done a lot of things. The thing that I found the most powerful regarding feeling safe in sex is this thing called emotional freedom technique tapping. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of EFT. It's beautiful. Magical thing. And that really helped me a lot.
And how did that work for you?
So it's kind of like an onion layer, and you like do this tapping sequence with a practitioner, and it just helps you get it helped me, I'll say, get super clear on what I was comfortable with and what I wasn't comfortable with, and how to set those boundaries with my partner. And it has not been something that's been overnight. It's taken time. But what I found is that I'm able to get my needs met and to feel really comfortable. And this was the brilliant thing. I started being able to explore things that I never thought that I would want to explore because all of a sudden I felt safe to do so. So in the beginning, first and foremost, my husband is like an extreme feminist who is super in touch with his masculinity and who loves to be a pleasure, which what
You're
a gift.
Like, thanks. That's great.
What a gift, right? And he's been so patient with me and in our experience, especially after giving birth, which can be a really traumatic experience for women who have overcome sexual abuse. And actually, I'm a doula, birth doula. So
of course you are. My goodness. Let me add that to the list.
I actually just attended another birth like a week and a half ago for women who have overcome sexual abuse. So it started with a conversation of I don't like kissing when we have sex. It makes me feel like I can't breathe. I don't feel safe. It sends me into a place of kind of shock feeling. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, we don't have to kiss during sex. No big deal. It started with these small conversations. And what I found was the safer that I felt with him, the more I was willing to reopen up to those things. Yeah. And some things were just a solid no for me. But I've been willing to explore, which is such a wonderful thing. Yeah. A lot of, not to get too graphic, but a lot of
You're totally free to be graphic on here.
My abuser, one of the experiences I had was when I was 5. We were in a hotel room. And he bent me over the bed and was masturbating really aggressively against my butt. He pulled my underwear down and it traumatized me, obviously. And he like ejaculated all over my legs. And I just remember like the feeling of the semen dripping down. And I remember saying no. And he was like pinning my back down. And sorry if this is triggering anybody. Like,
maybe instead of graphic, like trigger warning.
Trigger warning.
Yes.
Put that in your intro.
Yes.
So I had a really weird thing with like his dick near my butt. Like that was like a no. Like even just like don't even touch it near, like no doggy
even just
style.
I was
like,
gonna say from behind,
like
that wouldn't.
None of it. But slowly but surely over time, like I felt safe enough to try to explore those things again. And so he let me lead the way. So I would call out things that like maybe felt safe. And sometimes I'd be like, great. And then sometimes I'd be like, I'm too in my head for this. And like, I actually can't do this. Yeah. And so it's about just having that communication of like, I've been abused and I need to feel safe with you. And thankfully my husband's been so amazing about it. But now it's like, doggy style is one of my favorite things. Like, we get down. Like, I love it. Bend me over the bed. Like, I don't care. But there, you know what I mean? It is.
But that's opening time to get
those
there.
Lines. Years. Years.
Yeah.
Of my poor husband either having missionary or me on top. That was it. The poor guy.
Well, he was still able to connect with you and share like an emotional and physical experience. So.
Thank God for sobriety because we've only had sex sober.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've really been in tune with my body and my needs. I think for a long time I would get loaded just to have sex.
Yeah. And I think that's quite common, even for people who do not have substance abuse issues, or at least they don't think that they do.
Or sexual trauma or whatever. They're just, they feel like they have to have 2 glasses of wine before they get into bed.
100%. And it's so strange. Yeah, you actually, I'm sober. You don't know.
I didn't know that.
We didn't talk about this yet. But yeah, I have never had sex with a partner when they've been drunk. I'm just like, I won't do it. Like, I don't, that doesn't sound appealing to me to have sex with you while you're drunk. Like, you can have, a glass of wine at dinner and I'll have sex with you. That's one thing.
But a small, mild buzz is one thing. But like drunk, then it's just like sloppy and then you just feel like you're being used.
Yeah. And which like sometimes is a vibe. Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, use me.
Yeah.
But yeah, not in that way. And yeah, I think the soberness, first of all, the sober lifestyle in general, I have questions on for you. A lot of people ask me questions of, how you go out, all that stuff. But also even sexually and in dating, you were sober when you met your husband?
And then we met in AA, which I know is like so fucking taboo. We met in AA.
Are you supposed to be single the first year?
Yeah, well, we weren't. The first couple of months we were just friends. And then... yeah, we got married 8 months later, but it worked for us, and we're a miracle. Like there was, I found my person. I knew my first date with him that I found my person. He did too, and then he dumped me 2 dates later because he knew he was scared. He was 35.
Yeah.
He had been through so many relationships. His mom committed suicide when he was 14. He had just been through so much, divorced parents, the whole thing. Yeah. And so I think he got a little bit scared.
Yeah, he was like, I'm not ready yet. I have more healing to do, but I still love you and I want to pick this back up.
But then he was like, but what am I talking about? I'm 5 years sober. So he was already 5 years sober at that time. And it's worked for us in a really beautiful way. And like, we are the exception, you know what I mean, to the rule. And so I always say to people, the key is this, like, there is no, like, you complete me. You have to be 2 complete people.
100%. That's my thing. I'm like, we're not, like, fulfilling each other's puzzle.
Issues.
Like, you're your own puzzle.
You can have issues. You have to be willing to work on them and meet me 100% effort in this marriage, and me too. And or relationship.
Yeah, it's not a 50-50. It's 100%.
It's 100%. And I always talk about my rule of 5. And so if I hold my hand out, like, my first priority has to be myself and my spiritual practice. Second is my marriage. Third is my kids. And people are always like, what?
No, agreed.
I'll tell you why. Because if I don't take care of myself, then my marriage fails. If I don't take care of my marriage, my children suffer. Then after my children is my work. And then after my work is my like play fun stuff. So that's my rule of 5. And if any of those things fall out of order, I'm fucked. I'm fucked. I can start feeling it in my relationship, or I feel it in my relationship with my children, or my stress at home. And then I start feeling it at work because I'm not able to be clear-headed at work because I'm so focused on what's going on at home. And you know what I mean? It's like a ripple effect. And so I always tell people, like, you have to be your first priority, and that doesn't make you selfish.
No,
not
at all. Mm-mm. So, first of all, you said the last thing is play and fun, and you already seem like such a blast. I'm like, okay, so like, when are we hanging out next? But one of the things I've talked a little bit about on Instagram, but people are really curious about like living a sober lifestyle, like how to, just recognizing patterns within their own alcohol usage, wanting to feel better, wanting to just overall have a healthier lifestyle. And I'm curious for you if there's any kind of tips or practices that you would share around your socializing that, have helped make you still be like a fun person that enjoys going out and socializing and having a fun time, but sober.
It's interesting because I'm actually an introvert but I need that time. I need that time with my girlfriends, and I need to do those things that like make my heart sing. I think people think that, oh God, you're gonna have such a boring life. I'll tell you. In sobriety, my very best friend is married to a Backstreet Boy, so we like have tons of fun. Like,
amazing.
My point is this:
I dance with them.
We're in Vegas. We're in Vegas. We're at the Staples Center. We're taking our kids to Cabo. We're at Artist Passes Coachella. We still get the LA glitzy, glammy life, and now I get that that's a privilege because I live in LA. But my point is that you just have to put yourself out there. All of that exists. Like my life, like once the show ended and I worked past all my shame stuff and I started developing relationships again, and I started going out into the world again, because spending a year at rehab, like you don't go in the world.
Yeah, no.
You're like in rehab. Was being willing to like go up to people and say, hey, and like learning about people.
Yeah.
Oh my God. How nice is it to like ask people questions and to really understand them? And it's led to some of the best. And like, that's what podcasting is all about, right? Like having these in-depth conversations. So fun.
Yeah.
So my life is far from boring. It's exciting. It's fun. I still have lots of my like LA girlfriends, and we do very LA things. You just have to be willing to like move into the space a little bit, and to also know when those spaces aren't safe. Like it was not safe for me to go to a bar or a club before I had a couple years sober. It just wasn't, without a sober friend. And it's interesting now because I run into a lot of friends when we're in these concert environments that are sober, and they have their like sober posse when they're newly sober, and they need that. And so that's really just such a great thing and such a gift. My husband's a big fan of the Grateful Dead. I know that really ages him, but they have AA meetings at every concert during the break.
No way.
Isn't that so fucking cool? And so we're starting to see these like communities of people who are rallying around, who are willing to have sober fun. Like if you want to go skydiving, but you only wanted to go because you were drunk, like then you didn't really want to go skydiving.
Yep.
And so I think a lot of people associate with like those crazy fun things with that. But I'll tell you, the best times that I've ever had in my life are like going to Mexico sober and riding on the jet skis and like doing all of the things and really experiencing the whole thing because I'm alert and present for it. So fun. Go ziplining sober. It's a real thrill.
Well, I mean, a big part.
It's a real rush.
Oh yeah, I think a big part of substance abuse treatment is new people, places, and things. And I think just finding like those new hobbies, finding those different things to do. Like if your whole lifestyle is going out for happy hour to get a few drinks before you then go out to the bars, it's like you as a sober person, you could maybe go out and do those things and be getting mocktails the whole night, but like you likely are going to want to switch it up and have some other activities in your life. I mean,
you've got to find your vibe. So like my girlfriend Ariel and I, like my friend Sahara just announced this trip with Deepak Chopra in Mexico, a wellness retreat for 5 days. And we're like, sign us the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like we'll be there and we'll be having so much fun with our mocktails, you know, twerking our asses off on the beach. Yeah. You'll find us there.
Yep.
You know
100%.
what I mean?
Yeah. Do you have a favorite mocktail? Like a go-to?
I don't really do mocktails. So it's like of course I'll have like the occasional virgin pina colada on vacation just because I want sugar, really. No, but like club soda and lime is like where it's at for me. Like that's, I drink mineral water, like carbonated mineral water all day long with lime. And I don't find it to be awkward. I'll tell you, I go to like lots of launch parties. Tonight I'm going to that Kristen Cavallari party. Yeah. Everyone's going to be drinking and whatever. And I just never find it uncomfortable. Yeah. And if anything, I feel like most people don't even notice.
I agree. I think most of the times when people
especially if they're drunk.
Yes, exactly. Well, sometimes they might be like, what are you drinking, water? And I'm like, yeah. And then they're like, oh. Well, you want to drink? And I'm like, no. But I do think that like when you come at it from a place of being really confident in your pursuit in life, when you come really confident with your values, with your desires, where you're at in your life, and you're not still in that place of like kind of questioning yourself, like when you have purpose and you can stand in that truth, I think these kinds of things become less uncomfortable for you. And I think you feel less insecure in them. Like I hear from a lot of people that are like, you know, oh, like I always feel embarrassed asking the bartender for a mocktail. And it's like, if you're really owning your truth and if you're really standing in that and you're like, you've come to peace with it and you feel confident in it, because if someone asks you why you're sober or why you're not drinking, you have like a, you know, bullet point list of like, these are the reasons why I don't. And like, I feel secure in that. And like, I'm good in that. Or
you can just say that you're like, what's that term that we used to use in high school? It starts with an S. That you're, you know.
Sober Sally?
No. I'll think of the word. Where like you don't have sex and you're.
Oh, you're like straight edge?
Straight edge. You just be like, no, I'm like a straight edge. Whatever. Like, I don't even tell people. Literally, I walk up to the bar and I'm like, I'll have a club soda and lime and I slip them a 20. And like, nobody knows. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like what it's about. I'll also say that when my girlfriends who do drink, I have a lot of friends that drink wine on a regular basis. And I'll go over to their house and I'll bring my kombucha and I'll pour it in a wine glass and sit down next to them. And I feel like I'm getting the whole experience.
I do the same thing. I'm not even going to lie. I do the same thing. I'll get some kombucha or I'll do like an apple cider vinegar tonic. And I'll be like, put that shit in a fancy wine glass.
Exactly. I'm here for it. 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's, I think we are starting to see more people shift to this. And I think the more that like, people like you and even myself who share our experiences in this and are able to just really be like strong in that helps also like encourage other people to be like, oh yeah, it's actually not as uncomfortable because like I heard so-and-so talk about how they don't drink either. And it's, I don't know. It's, I hope that we see more people move towards it because it is such a problem.
The sober curious movement. And I think it's interesting. Like when I go to listen, and I'm not judging anybody's use, but on the first day of school drop off, when I go to my local coffee shop, which is right next to the school, and they're serving champagne mimosas at 8:15 a.m. for the Mommosa happy hour because summer's over and our kids are back in school. It's like, that's a problem. Yeah. When you're so miserable that you have to go and get a buzz on at 8:15 a.m., like, that's a problem, you know?
Yeah, but see, it's so marketed. I actually got
towards moms,
and women in general. Yeah. Even when I look at like the Bachelor franchise itself, I'm like, my God, I could go on a whole rant about this. But even I received a whole thing of wine from this company. Don't know why they sent it to me. I was like, this is not.
Were you sober on the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The last time I only drank when I was 12, and I had like half of a Mike's Hard Lemonade when I was 17 for my girlfriend's 18th birthday. It was like the one thing she really wanted me to do. And I like had a few sips of it.
You just don't like the feeling?
No, I mean, I didn't like the taste of it, A. I didn't like the feeling that I was like getting out of control. I'm already a pretty physically weak person. And I was like, I don't want to be putting myself at more risk of like being in vulnerable situations where someone could take advantage of me. That was like a fear of mine. And I then saw my friends get into really bad, shitty situations where I was like, I don't think we should be in this situation right now. And like, you're fucking wasted. And like, if I was wasted right now too, like who knows what would happen to us? And then seeing my family members pass away from cirrhosis and getting cancer from chain smoking cigarettes and all these things where I was like, this is so preventable. And like, do I really need to do this? Like, there's not really a need for me to be doing this. It's going to make me feel like shit. Then I'm spending money on this, which is like stupid. And then I'm like, I'm not even remembering things, or I'll get in trouble, or I'll get sick. And I just didn't, I preferred smoking weed at the time. I was like, this feels much better. And it's like a plant. So I like that part.
Yeah.
I felt more in control of that as well. And I was like, I didn't like this feeling that I was going to be totally out of control. And I was like, anything that I feel like I have to take a drink for to do, right? Like if I was going to, in high school, if I was going to have a threesome, like did I need to like take a bunch of shots before doing that? And I'd be like, or even to go talk to a hot guy at a bar, right? And I'd be like, I don't want to feel like I have to take a drink in order to do these things, because I would rather like challenge myself to find the courage and feel empowered in myself to be like,
and then it becomes
you know what?
easy. Yeah. And then it becomes easy. And even now I find myself like, I went to New York a couple days ago. I just got back and I rode the subway all by myself because I wanted to have that experience. And I was like, I would have had to like get loaded to do this before, to have the bravery to like switch subways and figure it out and whatever else. And while I was looking at all these hot investment guys, like smiling, like making eye contact. Like I would have never had the confidence to do that before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And my husband knows about that guy, so like don't DM him.
It's okay. You're allowed to be attracted to other people.
Yeah, and he is too. You know what's interesting?
You guys are a very hot couple as well.
Thank you. You know what's really interesting, because I'm bisexual.
Yeah.
This is something that I think is really so cool about my husband, and I've never taken him up on this.
Yeah.
I'm saving it for Ruby Rose. No. But he always
that's a good
says
one.
to me, he goes, honey, like if I'm not meeting your needs sexually, like feel free to like go and find a girl. And I was like, that says so much about the fact, like how confident you are in yourself and in our marriage. And while personally, like I don't feel the desire to do that. Thanks for like letting me have the option. And I would feel the same way, like if he was bisexual. I think that that's much more taboo to talk about for some reason, which is still really unfortunate. Like I'm sure that there's a large population of bisexual men out there that just totally deny the fact that they're bisexual.
Definitely. There's definitely like a spectrum there that I think men are way less empowered and encouraged and even feel allowed to have the space to explore. Whereas with women, I mean, it's worse. Our sexuality is so like over sexualized, and even just like us being bisexual is encouraged in some ways, because that's even more
it's
sexy
hot and sexier. Yeah,
exactly.
It's weird. But like if you're a guy who's bi, all of a sudden you're gay. That's and that's
just
gross.
You're gay.
Like no.
It's like, it reminds me of doing like the one drop rule. Like if you're even half black, you're full black. Like that's like very much like a one drop rule kind of application to that. Is that the right word? I don't know. But I'm curious then, do you guys have conversations around like monogamy?
Yeah. So we've been in and are currently in a monogamous relationship. We've talked about bringing other people into our relationship. And here's the thing. It's like when we got married, like I made a commitment. First of all, we made a commitment that we were never going to get divorced.
Yeah.
That has not been easy. Like we're working through some stuff right now that is
tough.
Dark and rough. But we love the fuck out of each other, and we're each other's best friend. And it's just stress and work stuff on his end, not so much mine. And he's really, picking it up right now with the I love yous and I'm sorry and sweet texts and all that. And I love that.
Yeah.
So we're working on it. But no, I have not ever felt the desire. and he's never expressed a desire. Here's the thing.
To be
when
non-monogamous.
To be non-monogamous. My husband got married to me. I was 20, so I hadn't had very many relationships, and he was 35. Mm-hmm. And so he's basically like, I've had sex with, so many, prostitutes. Like, I've paid for sex so many times. Like, I don't need to have sex with anyone else but you forever. And he's like, you're like the sexiest woman in the world to me. Like, I can't imagine having sex with anyone else. Like, and I'm sure, he watches porn, and I'm sure that's like a great like way for his mind to like, imagine or whatever. Fantasize. But he's just like, first of all, I don't need to have sex as much as I did. He's 45 now. Yeah. Back in the day when I was a 30-year-old dude. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, I love you. And like, when I do have sex, I just want to have sex with you. Mm-hmm. And so that works for us. The bisexuality on my end is more so like of me not getting a need met. Like, I am very attracted to women. Mm-hmm. That's something that I denied about myself for a long time. So I had sex with girls before I had sex with guys.
Same.
Yeah. Like, I've always felt more comfortable having sex with women. Mm-hmm. I've always felt really attracted to women. Yeah. And so he's like, if that need's not being met, I want to respect that. And if you want to go out and like hook up with a girl, like, I honestly have no problem with that. It's just not something that I've felt like has been really a priority or something that I need.
Well, you're a doula, you're writing a book, you got a company, you got a podcast.
So we'll see, we'll see if that ever comes up. But as of right now, we just have sex with ourselves or each other.
Yeah. Has that been a conversation of like, for you, with being bisexual and not having that need met, is that something that you're wanting to exclusively experience, or would that be like an inclusion type of experience?
Exclusive. Yeah. He's like, if that's something you want to, of course, if I was like, I'm going to bring a girl home, come and watch, like, he would be like, okay,
But that's something that like you're wanting to experience exclusively.
I feel like if I was going to have that experience, it'd be something that I would want to have on my own. But you know what? He really fulfills, like I said, he's a very generous partner, and he prioritizes me. Like, he will not have an orgasm before I've had an orgasm. Like, he is very yes. And he like loves to go down on me. Like, there's all of these things that just, let's just wait for this.
Yeah. Fire truck. We are in the W Hollywoods. Yes. We are right on Hollywood Boulevard.
So he's a very generous partner, and like honestly, all of my sexual needs have been met. Like, have there been times that I've seen a hot girl and been like, oh, she'd be fun to like make out with? Yeah, but it's just like not been something that I've like actively sought out. You know? Yeah, but I like sense. I used to love going to West Hollywood. I used to like love
what's in West Hollywood.
It's all the gays. The whole gay community. You'll have to go down there. It's like rainbow everywhere, like rainbow lights, like rainbow. Everything is
I've
rainbow.
Never been over there.
It's really fun. It's so fun. But I used to love that experience. And it's just, I think too, like as a mom now, it's just like, I'm tired. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
that's very valid.
Yeah. But
that's not like, again, play is your number 5.
It's my number 5.
Yeah,
which is still a priority. You know what I mean?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. And play too, for me, looks, I have a 4 Seasons next to my house. So I like book a massage at the 4 Seasons with my girlfriend. Like, you know what I mean? That's it.
Treat
too.
yourself.
Yes. Absolutely.
Is there anything that, I mean, there's a lot, but like, is there anything else that's coming up for you that like people should necessarily look out for, or that you want to share that you're working on?
No, I just launched my online course, which I'm really excited about. Okay. It's called the Life Reset Program. And it's basically everybody who's DM'd me over the years, like, how do you do it? How do you obtain long-term sobriety? And so it's like subconscious reprogramming and all of that, all the way up to like manifestation. And I'm really stoked about that. But the biggest thing that I just want to say is that like, you're so worthy. Like I said before, like the Alexis who was out there, like as a heroin addict, was just as worthy of like love and respect as the Alexis that is here standing in front of you or you're listening to today. And you're so worthy of that too. Like, you're not broken. You're not damaged. Like, you're perfect, you know? And if you need help with drugs or alcohol, reach out to me. Like, I live in my DMs. I'm always there for people. If we can't take you at our center, I'll find you a place to go. Like, I will fight until like we figure it out, whether that's a county bed, which we hope that won't be the situation, or, you know, a network facility. Like, we really, really work hard to get you access because, first of all, I know how hard it is to reach out. And, you know, there's just so much shadiness that's happening in the business right now with patient brokering and all. Oh my God, you just need to know like the safest place to go. So
even just the treatment centers in general, I feel like, because John Oliver did a fantastic piece on it, and I was like, oh,
I won't say who, but someone really close with me recently worked with the FBI to shut down 5 centers in Malibu.
Wow.
Because we're just so sick of it. It's tarnishing our name.
Yep.
We're the only treatment center that's advocating for more regulation. We're like, we need more. And we're JCO accredited, which is hospital level accreditation at our facility. And we're like, still, we need more. So while we have 24-hour nurses and all of us, not all places do. And so you just really need to know that you're going to a facility that's safe.
Yeah. And a facility that's like guaranteeing your sobriety, like that I feel like is a major red flag of like, you're going to come to our 6-week program and you will be cured afterwards. Is like, no.
It's total bullshit. We're really lucky, you know, and this is just our in-house statistics. Most treatment centers have like an 18 to 20% success rate. We're about 52%, which is pretty amazing. But I believe that's because the vast majority of our patients stay with us for 6 months to a year. And we believe in, our whole model is based on our slogan, which is connection, not control. And so it's about forming these deep, beautiful relationships and then working through the trauma. You know what I mean? Like I said, building up that toolbox and then getting to the root.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And what was the name of the center again?
Aloe
House.
Yeah. Aloe House Recovery Centers. But like I said, you guys can always DM me or message me if you need help or you have a loved one that needs help or you just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You know, DM
and
me.
Instagram is at Alexis Haines.
It's Alexis Haines. Yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm like, we're going to keep talking. I have so many other questions. And then I'll be on your podcast next time I come down. Yeah. And so you all can also be sure to check out her podcast as well. But thank you so much. This was amazing.
Thanks for having me. It was great. Thank you.
All right, that does it for today's episode. Thank you so much for making it all the way through and keeping your ears, your hearts, and your minds open. It would mean so much to me if you could take a second or two after listening to this episode to leave a review on iTunes and let me know what you're enjoying about the show. I love reading, you know, what your favorite episodes are, where you guys listen, and definitely feel free to share this with a friend. I mean, part of how we break down the stigmas around these topics is by talking about them, right? And sharing them with more people. So definitely share the podcast. And again, really wanting to include all of you in this podcast. So if you have questions or you want to share a thought or an experience, please send in a voice memo to ask.letstalkaboutit@gmail.com. And I'm really excited to keep having these conversations and breaking down these stigmas. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next time.